This is my second time speaking at Making Midwest, and my second time showing up in the morning and finding out I'm speaking. So the few years ago I came and I asked Matt what I could do to help out, and he's like, we have a 10:30 slot with a no-show. What do you think? So I kind of stepped up and did it then, and I'm doing it again this morning. So if I had known I was speaking, I would have worn my big boy pants, so I apologize that you have to see my white pasty legs. I was actually at a conference at the Creative South Conference, and I was having lunch with some younger designers, and one of them, she told me that I dress like a dad. And I said I'm fine with that because I am a dad, so that really doesn't bother me any. My presentation has evolved over the years, and just like our careers and just like the way that we as we grow, as we go through different phases of life, different things become more important to us. I hope you'll bear with me today. I'm in the process of transitioning a presentation I've done for many years into something else. You're going to see kind of something that's half done today. So hopefully it'll be good, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with you guys. So you ever ask yourself this question? What am I doing? Back in 2012, I took a month-long international trip, and I went somewhere totally off the grid. Wasn't able to contact or talk with any of my clients, told everybody I wasn't going to be sending or receiving emails, and just really did like a full unplug. And when I came back and I had that list. Everybody has that list of stuff that you have that you're working on, your projects. Well, the project list doesn't go away just because you do, right? So you come back and you kind of sit down and you start to look at that list. And because I had stepped away from it, I was kind of like having an out-of-body experience. And I was looking back at this list of stuff that I needed to work on when I sat down at my desk for the first time. And I just looked at it like, why am I working on some of this stuff? What is it about some of these projects that I have any business working on? Like, what is it about this? So I did a little bit of while I kind of had that feeling and while I had that sense, I decided I was going to start making some lists. So I made a list and I said, over the last 20-some years of me doing this, what are the projects and the clients that I have gotten just like I look at, and every time, even 20 years later, I look at that project and I'm like, man, that was such a great project. Man, that was just like one of those things that just brought me so much joy, and it really connected with the client, and in turn, it connected emotionally and in many ways with their clients and ended up improving their businesses. And so I kind of made a list of those. And it started to become really clear. And then I started asking myself a couple questions as well. Like, what moves you? What gets me out of bed in the morning? What breaks my heart? What things touch me and what things, change me fundamentally at the core? And I realized that there was a common thread among those answers to my questions and the answers to the clients that rose to the top of my list, the ones that I just felt like a really great connection with and had really great results from. And the threads that ran through all of those kind of fit into these three buckets. And they also align with my own personal, professional journey as well. And so kind of came up with this three-step process. And one is that all of us, me and my clients, at some point in time discovered great joy in something they did. And a lot of times it didn't even necessarily align with their day job. It was just something that they just couldn't help but do. And then a lot of times it was an unintentional experience that led them to that discovery. The opposite of this is kind of like those clients you've had, I'm sure you've had them, and they kind of like they go to the franchise shows, and they're just looking for a way to start their own business and make a buck, but it has absolutely nothing to do with what they love. It has nothing to do with what connects with them. A good example of this, I live in Clintonville, and probably about 4 years ago, we had like 9 frozen yogurt shops open up in our neighborhood. Like within like a 2-mile area, like 9 frozen yogurt shops open. And somewhere in some franchise, in some business book somewhere, everybody was saying that frozen yogurt was going to be the big thing that summer. And within 6 months, all 9 of them closed. And that's just, to me, that's this thing that goes, somebody's telling them something, and they're just like, oh, this is an easy way to make a buck. No one else has thought of doing a self-serve frozen yogurt stand, and then you find out everybody's been thinking about doing a self-serve frozen yogurt stand. I don't like working with clients like that. I don't like working with people who see an opportunity to make a buck and they chase that. I want to work with people that chase something that they've discovered inside themselves. The second step with these folks is that they've developed their joy. They gained experiences, they sought education, and many times worked to educate themselves. They didn't get any formal training or anything like that. And they just became obsessed. They totally became obsessed in a good way. They studied, they traveled, they reached out to others in the industry, and eventually many of them quit their day jobs and started emptying their savings accounts to pursue this thing. And third, they had to spread their joy. They couldn't keep it contained within themselves. Once they had kind of figured it out, they just couldn't. They just had to take this and share it with other people. And it's their way of expressing love to others. Obviously, if something that creates that much like passion for yourself, it just overflows into loving other people with it. And so a lot of times the way this works is people take this overflow, and instead of like baking something that they've been making in their kitchen that they've been taking to the family reunions and stuff like that, they decide maybe I'll get a stand at the local farmer's market and I'll start selling my stuff there. Or they start making gift baskets and giving them out to friends who are like, well, can I order a bunch of those for our Christmas presents for next year? And it just becomes this thing where they haven't been able to contain it. They've spread it with others, and it just organically turns into a business. And this is my story as well. So I came up with a name for these clients, and they're called Joy Ventures. And so my current business model is that I'm trying to attract clients who fit this same model. It resonates really well with the way I do work, and I'll show you a couple examples of some of these clients later in my talk. But I want to start first by talking about how I discovered my joy as a graphic designer and illustrator. I discovered my joy early. I was born in 1974 on the south side of Detroit, and I grew up in the Motor City. Have you ever noticed how people from Michigan use their hand to describe what part of the state they're from? You know what I'm talking about? Michigan, folks? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, it's a Michigan thing. But one of the things I love about Detroit is it's a city of social and economic diversity. It was there that I discovered my love for like industrial machinery and American muscle and hard work and Motown music and vintage Americana. And that really plays into a lot of the design work and illustration I work to do today. As soon as I was old enough to hold any kind of drawing implement, I drew. And I just marked on everything I could. I did my walls in my bedroom, like whatever it was, I just drew on it. And it just brought me so much joy. And my mom is an artist at heart, but had a dad who discouraged her from choosing it as a career path. And I think that it was really encouraging for her to see me like really connect with that. So here I am at age 2, and I'm creating my first masterpiece in chalk. I still work with a trusty dog by my side. If you don't work with a dog, I highly recommend it. No, that's not an Instagram filter. That's what the world looked like in the 70s. I was always fascinated with simple machines. And I probably would have gone into mechanical engineering if math wasn't so involved. But I discovered, one of the things I discovered at an early age was my bicycle. And it was an object of freedom and connection with friends. And it allowed me to explore my neighborhood. I had freedom with it. I was able to like learn how to fix it and customize it. I used to put the cards in the spokes, so it sounded like I was riding a motorcycle around the block. And I couldn't believe my pants never got stuck in a chain, which is really amazing. And when I was about in 6th grade, my dad took a job in California. And so moving from Detroit to San Diego in the middle of my 6th grade year was quite a shock. But one of the things that became a conduit to friendship was my bicycle, and it allowed me to make friends and make connections. One of the things that that I'm sure a lot of you guys can resonate with as well is I was not good at school. I lived for summer. And it was very clear at an early age, I struggled with some dyslexia issues. Total ADD kid. I had a lot of difficulty relating to peers. Completely math illiterate. Anyone else here math illiterate? Like, yep, I'm in good company here today. I was often bullied as a child, and I was an obsessive class notes doodler. And I really honestly felt uncomfortable everywhere in school except for in the art room, and it was like my safe place. And what I found out early on is I excelled at art and theater and ceramics and wood shop, but all of those were considered electives for some reason, and they weren't real subjects. Basically, the kind of classes that most kids just showed up for and got an A, and that really rubbed me the wrong way. And I kind of always wondered why math and science weren't the same way. But in a world that didn't make sense and popularity was based on how much money you came from or where bowl cuts were out of style, art was my superpower. And I always got picked last in sports, and I wasn't very popular. But whenever there was something that needed to be drawn, it was always me, and that was really exciting for me. It was the one thing that kind of cut through everything for me. So I want to talk about how I developed at an early age my love for drawing and art. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ed Emberley. Does anyone else recognize Ed Emberley? So my mom used to go to the library. We grew up pretty poor, actually, and so we would go to the library a lot, and my mom would check stuff out for me. And this is the Ed Emberley books were really awesome. And what was great about Ed Emberley is he would break down these drawings as these really simple shapes, and then they would say like, okay, we're going to add a black square and some like triangle shapes, and then we're going to color in the blue, and we're going to color in the black. And then it would take you through this whole process until you made these really cool creatures and characters. And he has everything from how to draw animals to lettering. I mean, this is pretty cool. They're teaching kids at a young age here how to do hand lettering, which is pretty cool if you think about it. How to do swamp monsters. And one of the things I realized looking back on my work is that it really does show in my work today. Creating illustrations from simple shapes and then coloring them in is what I do. That's what I do for my job. I create simple shapes, often geometric shapes, and I color those in, and that's kind of the basis for a lot of my illustration work. So at age 10, Detroit Edison Electric Company held a safety poster contest, and they basically said, we want to teach kids to stay away from downed power lines and scary stuff like that. So I entered it through my class, ended up getting first prize, which was awesome. That's my sister, who was very reluctantly there with me that day. But you'll see I've got this camera. This was my award, was this plastic film camera that is not a Leica at all, but kind of looks like one. And that camera was just such a prize to me, and I ended up using it quite a bit, and it kind of led to me being proficient in photography, and I do quite a bit of photography still today. But one of the things that I love about this is as I look back, I realized that this was like the first piece I actually designed. I illustrated it, I did the hand lettering, and even came up with a witty headline and illustration style for it. And so, even at an early age, I was starting to do some stuff that would lead me towards developing my skills. So in the middle of my 6th grade year, we moved to San Diego County. It was a bit of a stretch to find a body part that was shaped like the hand, so I'm going to go with an armpit. Is where we were there, and so. One of the things that was great about living in California in the 90s is that the total skateboard surf culture in the late 80s and the 90s was just awesome. I mean, the Thrilla Gorilla TNC shirts were really big at the time, and just everything was graphic and super bright colors and pinks and bright yellows, and it just loved that stuff. And so being there and living in that culture for a few years really connected with my sense of kind of a graphic feel to the work that I do. And then a few years later, we moved back to the Midwest. Ohio is the heart of it all. And I've really, really loved being here. I don't ever plan on leaving Columbus. I've been married and raised my family here, and I don't ever want to go anywhere else. We really love it, really love being here. And just for the purposes of this, I hope I don't ever move to Florida, because I'll just leave it at that. But one of the things I've discovered about living in the Midwest is I've rediscovered my love for Midwestern values: honesty, hard work, the value of community, the lack of pretension, and the design is pure, and it's designed to be accessible by anyone. And I really, really love that about design that comes out of this part of the country. So moved here while I was in high school. Ended up senior selects. That's me, most artistic, right there in the top left. That's what I looked like when I had hair. Kind of had the Conan O'Brien thing going on back then. And but the only reason I was able to graduate high school is because my art teacher gave me like 2 independent art classes my senior year, and it allowed me to muster a gleaming 2.7 GPA. Had it not been for those, I don't know what my GPA would have been, but it wouldn't have been pretty. But one of the things that was really great was being at the small school and being the kid that everybody called on to do artwork. And being in theater and all of that, I started just creating all the theater posters. And anytime something came up for school, I was creating the new thing for the next thing, the next event, and trying to get people to come out. And so I started doing it again. I started creating things and putting it out there, and it was really exciting for me to do, even at a small level. But all of that stuff that I did actually landed me my first job. I went to Portfolio University, meaning I didn't go to college. A lot of the work that I did in high school landed me my first job at a national retail shirt retailer. And for me, my education took place on the job. And I was blessed to have several patient mentors who guided me along my career path, from t-shirts and then on to working for video and film house, interactive agencies, and print. And it was quite a path. I recommend it to people that have the fortitude to do it that way. It's not for everybody. But a friend of mine, right around 1998, we started a small agency here in Columbus called Element. And there were only 2 companies we really wanted to work for. And one was a small ice cream shop in the North Market. I'm pretty sure you know who that would be. It was called Scream. And there was a woman named Jenny who would scoop ice cream at Scream, and we got to know her really, really well. And the other one was Columbus Brewing Company, and CBC at that time, they were losing $70,000 a year. And fortunately were purchased by a guy named Eric Bean, who runs it today and has brought them way into the black. But frankly, we were really just wanted to work for beer and ice cream. So this is our first office when we signed the lease. Seriously, that's what it looked like when we signed the lease. It didn't stay that way for long. I think the landlord was waiting for someone to put on the hook before he fixed it up. And by about 12 years later, we had grown to 6 people. And we learned sometimes the hard way, all the facets of running a small agency. And I really, really love this team of people. But there are downsides to growing. And one of the downsides is, especially back during that time in the late 90s, all of the, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but health insurance started going up, right? And we were taking care of everybody's benefits, and we had a commercial real estate on High Street, and it just started getting really expensive. And we got to a point where we had to basically start taking jobs from Nationwide and Ohio Health and bigger clients that could afford us. And what we had to also do was walk away from the opportunity to do the Jennies and the CBCs and projects like that, which was pretty disheartening for me, honestly. But we were really happy. It was a great working environment. I really loved it. But John, the guy that I had started Element with, had also had a side project that he was working on, and by I think it was probably like 2009, he had started an orphan care organization in Cambodia. And by the time 2009 came around, our design shop had become a front for orphan care in Southeast Asia. We were running 16 orphan homes in Cambodia and Thailand, and it was taking a majority of his time and energy. And it was one of those things where we were kind of like an incubator for something that was bigger than ourselves. And at the end of that year, we kind of gave birth to this nonprofit. It was really hard. It was a difficult time for all of us involved, but there were some. Oh, I thought I was on this slide. So these are the people. That's John over here on the left. John still runs this organization. They now have 33 orphanages, and they're in India as well. And their offices are based here in Columbus. So if you have a chance, definitely check out. Oh, that's why I'm clicking backwards. It's all right. I'll get this. It just takes me a little bit. So at this point, I owe an awful lot to my wife. She really encouraged me because I'm the kind of guy who's like, well, I got to keep providing for my family, and my agency just closed. And she just said, don't go take the first job that someone offers you. And there were plenty of job offers. She really encouraged me to try to strike out on my own and see what would happen. And so one of the things that really kind of excited me about that is that I could cut all that overhead and go back to being able to work with those Jennies and CBC type clients again and still make a profit. And so that's what I did. And I started in my bedroom. And this is the bedroom in our little 1,400 square foot house in Clintonville. And I basically just set up a little shop, hung a curtain between my bed and my office space so that I didn't feel like I was needed to go take a nap all day long. And I would just meet clients at their offices or at Starbucks or whatever so that I didn't have to have a conference room. So this was really encouraging. The first year that I was out on my own, we entered a bunch of work in Columbus's Creative Best with CSCA and won 7 awards that year, including Judge's Choice by Jessica Hish. And that was one of those first signs that was like, okay, I'm doing something right. There's something here. And then a year later, I was nominated by a client and selected for Business First 40 Under 40, all while still working out of my bedroom. And so that's me in the shadow back here. This is maybe the only documented photo of me wearing a tie ever. But I was surrounded by surgeons and lawyers and CEOs and philanthropists, and I felt completely out of place, but I was super, super grateful for the recognition. So over the years, I'm celebrating 10 years out on my own now this November, which has been quite a ride. And I've just had lots and lots of opportunities, lots and lots of people that have trusted me. I've had opportunity to work with Nickelodeon on a few projects. This piece right here you've probably seen before. What was really awesome was we were watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and my kids and I were watching it, and then all of a sudden my daughter about choked on her cereal because this was about 8 feet wide on the side of a float going down the middle of the parade, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So my kids are really funny because even when my daughter was little, anytime we'd walk into a Meijer or any store that sold toys, she would drag me to the children's aisle, and we would just stand and look at all the boxes of Shimmer and Shine stuff, and she's just so proud that her dad designed that logo. I got a chance to work with SpongeBob. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that on some projects. And then just some passion projects. I ride a vintage scooter, so anything I can do to help the local scooter nerds put a club together is fine. And so this is just kind of a quick sampling of some of the things I've done over the years. I probably could update this. Do a lot of work with food and beverage, which I really, really love to do. I love that. I love working with a product that doesn't just have to look good; it has to taste good and smell good. And all of that, and so it's very fulfilling work. Do some photography work as well. And then I've been doing a lot more athletic work for universities. So sports mascots. I've just rebranded Tiffin University last year. And then the other thing I do is spend a lot of time with illustration. That's my beast. That's Scout. She's a 12-pound miniature poodle, and she is my shadow. Every time I go downstairs to get coffee, she is right there with me. So just a sampling of some of the stuff I do. I do some infographic type work. This is some stuff for the Wexner Medical Center. And then I also love just designing mascots. So not just for sports stuff, but also for like corporate work. So today, Slagle Design is 4 people. That's me. And then Casey, and if you looked closely at that picture earlier with the lineup, Casey was the one all the way to the left, and she kind of ended up coming full circle and working for me, and she's now a part-time stay-at-home mom and works for me 2 days a week, and it's a really, really great situation. She was creative director for Jenny's for a couple of years as well, and she's just been a great fit. My wife, Becky, she's the mathlete in the family, so she makes sure we stay in the black and works with taxes and all that stuff. And then, and like I said, that's my beast, Scout, on the far left. And she's head of hospitality, so she's the only person that's allowed to lick our clients. I've had to tell Casey that a few times. I'm like, stop licking the clients, that's Scout's job. Don't tell her I said that, she's not here right now. So the second part of my journey is developing my joy, and in my situation, developing my joy is also also has a lot to do with creating work with my clients and working with them on stuff. And so a few years ago, you guys know Dylan and Nond? Dylan and Nond are 2 of my best buds. We did a 105-mile bike ride down to Portsmouth and back over 2 days. And one of the things, we did a lot of training, we did a lot of riding, getting ready for it, but one of the things we noticed was there weren't many people that passed us. But every once in a while, there would be a bike that would just go flying by us. And one of the things that I started to realize about that bike is that it had 2 riders on it, right? Tandem bicycles are really amazing because they have the same amount of wheels that are touching the road, but they have twice as many people powering them, and it really allows them to go a lot faster. And so I started thinking, like, when you're riding 105 miles, you've got a lot of time in your brain to be thinking about this stuff, but it's such a great illustration for what we get to do when we work with our clients as creatives. So when clients invite us to partner with them in what makes them joyful and what they're trying to spread with the world, we can hop on with them and help propel them past the pack. And so one of the things you'll notice a lot of times in my work is that I love bicycles, and I've, going back to that earlier part of me, but especially tandems. You'll see it shows up a lot in my work because it's on my mind a lot. So I wanted to just kind of talk with you about 3 quick case studies of 3 projects that fit this. They were on the list of people, and they really resonate, and they work with these 3 things. So Brittany Baums. Anybody know what Breitzel is? Have you been to Breitzel in the North Market? It's over in the Jenny's corner. So I call that corner my corner of the market. You see how that works? I did worked with Jenny's. I've worked with Breitzel, and then also the Black Radish Creamery that's in that same corner. I did a lot of the identity work for them as well. But I just want to talk real quickly about Brittany. So this is Brittany. She'll be in there every once in a while when you go by. Make sure you stop by and say hi to her and tell her Jeremy said hi. But when she first came to me, I had the difficult task of telling her that her logo needed to change. She was putting her first step out of the North Market, and she was going to start putting her product in the frozen food section. And as I did an assessment, I realized you can't just have a generic-looking pretzel with your name underneath it. You're going to get sued. So I had the difficult task of telling her this, even though she had just had the logos tattooed on herself. Sometimes it's hard to be honest, but this was one of those times. My honesty paid off, and we ended up working really, really well together. I think she appreciated the fact that I could look her in the eye and tell her that those needed to change. So Brittany discovered her love and joy for for pretzels she worked for a German automotive company and spent a lot of time in Germany. But the problem is that Brittany's a vegetarian. And if you know anything about German food, it's either got meat in it or it's cooked in meat fat or meat juices. And so she became really good friends with this family that had run a multi-generational Bavarian pretzel shop. And so she got to know them, and then she came back home, and she developed her joy by refining the recipe and sharing it with friends and family. And then she just started coming up with these crazy flavors, kind of like what Jenny did with ice cream. Brittany has kind of done the same thing with pretzels. And then she spread her joy by taking those pretzels and giving them out to friends and family, and then setting up a farmer's market shop. And then eventually she quit her job and took the leap and started her space in the North Market and created a work environment that really fosters creativity among her staff. So, once again, this is where we were at the time we met as far as her logo goes. Not something you can trademark. So started working with her, did a lot of sketching and stuff, and realized that with the letter B, a pretzel makes a pretty nice letter B, and ended up landing on this for their logo. And because all of her pretzels are made by hand and none of them are the same, and some of them are kind of gnarly looking in a good way, decided to hand letter all of the work that we did for her as far as all her flavors and fun stuff, which then ended up on her packaging. And this is the front of her shop if you ever happen to walk by that corner. What was great about this was, we basically just wrapped and painted something and then rubbed vinyl on it. It was something we basically hacked ourselves. This is her Over the Rhine shop down in Cincinnati now. And we paid homage to the fact that she got all of this love and discovered her joy back in Germany, where if you happen to ever go to Germany and you're looking for a pretzel shop, you look for a golden pretzel that's hanging outside the shop. So we wanted to kind of tell that story and be able to do it in a fun way, so we created these custom signs for her shop down there. So at the end of this project, this is what Brittany wrote me for my website. It says, Slagle Design transformed the look of our business from startup to professional, established a company with personality and history shining through. I'm impressed by his work, and so are our customers. We receive compliments all the time. Jeremy's truly a genius at his craft. I can't believe I'm reading this out loud. The customers are noticing the details, right down to the aprons. Not only have they said something about the brand and our space, but North Market management, other North Market merchants, and even new hires are giving us positive feedback. One merchant employee says, now you're making the rest of us look bad. So this is case study number 2. This is Daniel McEwen. Anyone here know Daniel McEwen? He hallowed these halls for several years. Daniel was a ceramics major here at CCAD and an avid cyclist. Daniel just really wanted a messenger bag to be able to get his art supplies from his apartment to CCAD, to his classes, and went through tons of bags, couldn't find anything that fit the bill for him. So having never sewn anything in his life, he developed his joy when he borrowed his grandmother's sewing machine and created a bag that met his high standards. Iterated and tried it, and stuff would get soaking wet, so he would change the flap, and he just kept working on it until he had something that he was really proud of. And then he started getting requests from other students while he was here, and the demand forced him into starting his own business before he had even graduated. This was his opportunity to spread his joy. When Daniel got out on his own and opened his first shop, he had designed his own logo, and we soon realized that it was hard to reproduce. It wasn't very embroiderable, and it just wasn't really as adventurous as what he really wanted his brand to be. So the first time I sat down with him, I remember the words that kind of stuck with me, and he said, "Make it epic." So I started looking into the ideas of mythical creatures and Greek gods for references, and we landed on Hermes and Mercury, the gods of speed, and it started to make sense for this idea of a messenger bag company. So this was the original logo we came up with for him. This is the goddess of bike messengers. And when you have their bags on, you can fly. So this is their first retail location that was down in my neighborhood in Clintonville. A great opportunity for me. I'd never done embroidered tags before, so that was really fun. And then we worked with Igloo Letterpress to make these really killer, I skipped past that one, and I don't know why. These really killer hang tags where the person that handmade the bag got to write a little note on every single one, so that it just kind of really pulled that whole handmade process along. But at some point in time, they moved into a larger facility, and they ended up doing a bunch of work for companies that would order like 3,000 bags at a time. So he closed his little shop, opened this giant shop, and then started just cranking out orders. And right about this time, he totally lost his joy for what he was doing. Up until that point, every bag you bought from Slagle was handmade with different colors. There was no two that were alike. And now he's trying to manage staff that are cranking out 3,000 of the same bag. Still made to the same standards, still had the same basic premise, but he started to feel like the part of him that was so valuable and important was getting lost. So he just had a moment where he just shut the whole thing down. Went away for 6 months, just kind of reconsidered some things, and started to realize that he was getting a lot more contacts from companies like climbing companies and other outdoor tactical type businesses, and realized that the idea of a logo that hemmed him so much into messenger bags was starting to kind of hold him back from some of the things he wanted to do. So we worked together and created this logo. This was the updated version of the logo for Slagle bags. It still shows the idea of swiftness and speed, but it also just allows him to go into more of the adventure and tactical and climbing and some of the other things. So he started making these really awesome backpacks. We got to do some fun stuff as far as branding those. Little tags. I love logos on little tiny tags. You know it's a logo if it fits on a little tiny tag. Got to do some fun stuff with hang tags. And at the end of this project, this was Daniel's quote. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to let you read it. Dyslexia boys, not good with a microphone in front of a bunch of people. But I love that I get to work with people that when I create something, it makes a difference for them. And that just really goes back to, me and just an overflow of what I do and what I love to do and how it impacts other people is really, really, really awesome. I love his comment at the end, that and a hot tub full of champagne. I don't know where that comes from, but. So case study number 3. This is the last of my case studies. This is Rocky and Courtney Shanauer. Rocky and Courtney were high school sweethearts in the small town of Sugar Creek, Ohio. Rocky discovered his joy during the summers while he was home from college, and he worked for a local pizza shop and became very, very good friends with the elderly man that had run the shop for years. One summer, the man told Rocky that he was going to be closing up the shop at the end of that summer. And Rocky jumped at the opportunity to buy the pizza place at a song. And he and Courtney became instant restaurant owners. They weren't even trained in any way to be chefs or in the culinary field at all. Before long, they changed the name, they updated the recipes, and they built a new location. When they contacted us, they were looking to expand their small restaurant due to the high demand and long lines. You would have hour-and-a-half waiting lines outside of their shop every Friday night easily. And so they quadrupled the size of their business. And at that time, they thought this would be a good time for us to do this. So before I already did that one. Before long, they changed the name. Yes, they did. They changed the name. Not only does Park Street make the best pizza I've ever had. If you're ever out in Sugar Creek, I highly recommend them. But they give back to their community in really great ways as well. And it's become kind of one of those best kept secrets by the locals. There's lots of people. You can go out and get the cheese tasting stuff at Heine's and all the stuff that's kind of commercially available for tourists and stuff. But if you want to go eat where the locals do in Sugar Creek, this is the place to go because people know Rocky and Courtney and how generous they are to their community. So when I met Rocky, he emailed me this logo. And I felt like I was going out on a little bit of a limb, but I sent him this and I said, I feel like it's a mashup of the Starbucks. If the Starbucks logo and the Mellow Mushroom logo had a baby, it would be your logo. And he's like, yeah, that's kind of where I got it from. So I said, let's create something that's a little bit more ownable, right? And so we did a really deep dive. I had, lunch with their favorite clients, and it was really, really great. Got to know them really, really well. But it was important that they had a strong connection between their food and the local Amish farmers who grow it. That's one of the things that makes them very different, is all of their food, the sausage that's on their pizza, the pepperoni, the cheese, all of the ingredients are all locally made by Amish farmers, and it just makes a really, really amazing, really, really great food. So the logo we created integrates this classic pizza cutting wheel with a tractor to emphasize the strong connection between Park Street's food and the local farmers who grow it. And so we had a lot of fun. We kind of blended the ideas of tools of the trade from, you've got your chef's knives and pizza cutting wheels, but we also started mixing them in with spades and garden hose and things like that to really show that this is all part of an integrated process of working with farmers and bringing it into our kitchen. So here's just a couple photos of the logo in action. Also did a lot of photography for them, spent the day with them, and went out to some farms and picked produce, and then we went back to the kitchen and they made some salads and stuff and documented all of that. It's all on their website. I won't bore you with the video, but being able to just go out and spend time in Amish country, going to see these producers and stuff was really cool. So Park Street's growing like crazy. They continue to spread their joy by being an important part of their local culture and giving back and supporting local businesses and local initiatives, as well as sharing their really amazing pizza. This is a quote from Rocky at the end of our project. I don't know what's coming up next. Oh, spread your joy. There we go. So basically, the third part of this talk is about how I choose to spread my joy with others, and a lot of that is done through side projects. So some of that happens through my work with clients. But I really continue to think of that as development for me. It's still me growing, and every project I learn something more and continue to iterate and do better at what I do. But spreading my joy to me is that overflow. And when you connect your joy with other people's joy, it becomes viral. And so for me, I use objects and I use things that I love, like cameras and bicycles and drawing, to lead me to opportunities that are outside of my own career. So this is a project I worked on with some friends about a year or so ago, and we named it Camp Click. That camera that was hanging around my neck back when I was 10 years old led me to do a lot of photography work. And so I was digging through my old camera closet, and I started to realize, I have old DSLRs that don't get used anymore because I bought the new one. And one of the issues that a lot of photographers become gear junkies, and they suffer from a thing that is called GAS. It's called gear acquisition syndrome. And a lot of people show this stuff off online. But there are a lot of people in the photography world that just load up, and they still have all of these cameras, right? And so I was kind of looking at it and going, what could I do with these cameras? What can I do to reach out with other people? And so I worked with Midwest Photo. They're a sponsor of this event this weekend. And I basically said, what can we do to encourage people to take that camera that they'll never use again, bring it in here, donate it to an opportunity to give to kids that are less fortunate than us, and then host some workshops where we teach them how to use it, and we give them the fundamentals of how this works. So we also partnered with the Columbus Foundation. This came out of a discussion we had through the big table, and here we are with the Columbus Foundation, and we ended up on the TV, on the TV. I just said on the TV. We ended up on the TV. And these were some of my partners on the project, Marshall Shorts and Corey Favor. Thad Devassi, to my right, is a good friend of mine, and we do a podcast together. And then we have some folks here that put us on the TV. Here's just a couple outtakes. This is Moishe Applebaum. He's the president of Midwest, and he cheesed it up for Monica talking about cameras on the news. And then a couple months later, we did this program, and we put these cameras into kids' hands that would have never been able to afford a camera like this before. We connected with a local charter school that was eager to allow us to try it. This is Matt. He's one of the guys that does a lot of the training and sales work at Midwest, and we went out there once a week and hung out with these kids and did like an intensive on how to use your cameras. We invited local photographers from the community to come in and guest speak and come in and talk with them as well. We taught them everything from shutter speeds and how all that stuff worked. And this is the group of kids we ended up working with, and it was a total blast. It was so great. That was Camp Click. Another way that I've spread my joy is through helping invite other people to spread theirs. And so one of the things as designers that we struggle with is kind of creating something out of nothing. We like to work within some sort of boundaries. And so came up with this idea for doing a bicycle poster show, and originally reached out to some folks who partnered with Wild Goose Creative on this project. And the idea is that we would get 30 artists to create 30 bicycle-themed posters, and we'd sell them for $30 each. And we ended up filling the day with screen printing demonstrations and a gallery full of stuff. And we had some really, really great work. A lot of people came out, live music throughout, and then we extended it in the evenings. We'd do it on Gallery Hop weekend, and we extend it. So here's Paradise Garage. We would turn it into a gallery as well. Some more of the work for this. But we basically met like-minded artists, and we invited them to join us as well. And this gallery ended up being like an overflow of other people's abilities to do side projects and stuff. So last year, this is another project I worked on with Ben's wife, Beth, and we partnered on a book that we kickstarted. This is it right here. We ended up getting it funded in the first 5 days, which just totally blew both of our minds. And it was really, really great opportunity. So these are a couple spreads from the book. If you have a chance, there's a stack of them out there if you want to pick one up and read through it. It's geared towards younger children. But the goal of it and the purpose of it is to help kids understand empathy. Help kids understand that when they see someone who looks like they've had a bad day, how do you have empathy for those people, and how do you treat them? And it was great because it was Beth sharing something that was an overflow of her joy, and me always wanting to do a children's book just kind of came together at the right time in the right place. We gave a workshop on it yesterday, and it was really, really fun to share the stage with her as well. Maybe it's something somebody said. And what was really cool is as you know, with Kickstarter campaigns, you always offer rewards that go along with Kickstarter campaigns. And one of them that I did was I thought, man, I have worked so hard and I've learned so much in Illustrator on how to create textures and brushes and make this book look so like non-vectory. I think that's a word, vectoryless. Thank you, Ben. I got the thumbs up. And so I really wanted to be able to share that with people. So one of the things we offered at a reward level was if you pitched in like $100, we would do an online class. And then I realized afterwards how much work it was to create an online class. So I spent just hours and hours and hours, and then it went off really, really well and got great feedback from it. And I thought, okay, that's done. Now I've got all this really cool stuff to share. So now, as of August 22nd, so next month on the 22nd, I'm going to host a workshop here in Columbus, and we're going to teach the same stuff. And if you note on there, if you use Making Midwest as a promo code on it, it's $50 off. So if you're interested in joining that, that's going to be coming up here August 22nd. And then finally, the hanging out was one of the the people you saw earlier in that picture, that lineup picture, was Thad Devassi. And Thad and I do a lot of work together. He's a writer and strategist. I make stuff look pretty. He makes it sound great. And we just decided that we wanted to take this idea of discover and develop and spread and reach out to other people who kind of model this in their lives. So we started a podcast in 2016. And we've just are using it as an opportunity to share other people's joy ventures with the world. This is Bill Lilly. Bill is the foremost penman. He's like world-renowned penman, and he happens to live here in Columbus, who's just amazing, amazing hand lettering, penmanship work. You've seen this guy before. It's Andy Miller, Daniel McEwen. Went out to Indianapolis and got Josh Emmerich on. He's a brilliant designer and illustrator, and Bob Ewing as well. So to wrap things up, I just want to come back to those 3 simple steps. Now, your 3 steps may be different than mine. You guys might find that as you kind of make that list of the work and the people and the kind of clients that you would like to bring into your shop, or the kind of people you want to work with, it may be very different than this. But I would recommend that you take some time to kind of look at the work that you've done, figure out like what is it that made this work so attractive to me and work so well with what I do, and then how does that integrate with the way you do work, and kind of figure that out. And I think coming to that conclusion and figuring that out can really help you as you continue to look for more work in the future, because it allows you to kind of really focus that. So the key is not getting stuck, though. This is not a linear thing as much as it's a loop. So once you've discovered and you've developed and you've spread, you need to discover something else, right? Like at some point in time, you got to go, that children's book I always wanted to do, I'm going to go do that. And you develop the skills to do it, and you spread that with other people. So you just have to make sure that whatever you do, you never stop discovering. Thank you.